My name is Silentage. Welcome back to my studio in the second episode of Sample Making, a series in which I'll try to give you an insight into my approach and my process of recording and producing experimental samples. So lately I've been really into this quite new genre called folk-noir, which is basically like an umbrella term for music that you could place somewhere between folk, neo-folk and black metal. I've been listening a lot to this one particular record titled Feldzanger by Norwegian band Ulver. To me, this album contains a lot of quintessential sounds of folk noir, which were later adopted by other bands like Imperium, for example. This genre relies heavily on acoustic instruments, orchestral sounds, ambient vocals, yet it remains very raw and minimal when it comes to production. Its themes revolve around nature, romantic poetry, North European mythology, and occultism, so I'd say it captures the vibe that I really like and kind of grew up on both musically and culturally. Either way, I tried to make a sample following some of the guidelines this genre has to offer, but to also give it my own spin, and honestly, it was one of my favorite musical experiments so far, and I'd say I went pretty wild in the end, so make sure to stick around. I usually prefer to record my percussion sounds live, but since this sample is already very acoustic focused, I wanted to make something different this time. So I decided to use some synthesized perks in combination with slightly more organic, yet still digitally sampled sounds. I'm laying down those staying off the grid most of the time and really emphasizing the groove that the acoustic guitar has already created. If you listen to this with click track on, it wouldn't be perfectly aligned, but since everything I record is either played on real instruments or by hand on my MIDI keyboard, it doesn't really matter. What matters to me though is the organic feeling and naturally occurring imperfections that make music way more alive. One thing that I like to do is printing loops like this to a different track that serves as a texture layer. I put this one to mono to make it more kinda choked in the mix. I removed lows and highs, really focusing on that mid-range, played some heavy compression with 1176 by UAD, and added a lot of saturation with actually a free plugin called IVG, which I like to use from time to time. And then I blended the original loop with this crunch layer. Right now I'm doing the final mix down of all the tracks, and one thing that I recently discovered is that you don't necessarily have to use plugins to affect the audio the way they were intended to do so, but to use them as a form of more passive, so to speak, coloration devices. This is especially useful with emulations of analog hardware that usually carry a lot of character and warmth of those great devices. For example, I really dig running my mix buses through Fairchild or Capital compressors, with little to no gate reduction, purely focusing on that beautiful tone they have. Or with Distressor from Empirical Labs, you can select a 1:1 ratio that will allow you to not trigger any compression, but instead to enable only the saturation circuitry of the device. Either way, I think this sample turned out really well. I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. As always, the stems and the master track will be available on my Patreon. If you like my work, you can support me over there, which would of course mean a lot to me. But for now, thank you for your time watching this, and see you next week. Peace.